Nets fans, New York City's, and listeners overall, the fuckery has begun. It is the off season, y'all, and Pot Thorn's here to talk to you about it. Let's do this.
Top on. Top on. Top on.
Pod Thorn crew. We're going through the most historic time in our franchise, and it has nothing to do with winning. My man Kool-Aid, what up?
Was good.
You feeling good? You feeling good? You my least
I
stressed
feel.
friend.
Oh, I feel great. I can see the future. It's bright for us. I'm feeling good. No stress.
I like that. I like that. Sam LaChow, what up, buddy?
What's going on? I'm also in a pretty optimistic state right now, surprisingly. But
I was
yeah,
mad yesterday when I got emotional for Ben yesterday because the reality of it is when you're just talking, you can't get like for like return on these players. But I look at it from the perspective of how good can you be potentially, right? If Ben's mind is right, I think potentially he's like a baby LeBron. If his mind is right, and this is the organization that says they pride itself on helping people physically, mentally, whatever the what was it performance team is got all these types of individuals in it. I think their greatest prize could be Ben, and if they trade Ben, we're now looking at maybe some dudes that could kind of be all stars. I don't know. That bothered me yesterday, but we won't even touch on that until later. I want to start off with kind of like before we go deep, where we are in everything, right? Like, where do we stand right now? All we know is Kevin Durant's asked out for a trade. Kyrie Irving has opted in, but since Kevin's gone, we think he's gone. And we're looking at all of these trade scenarios to rebuild this team. What am I missing, Sam? Talk to me. Where are we?
no, look, I think you got it. I think you had basically all the deals that were basically, wink winked about before even July 1st or June 30th hit, and those were done instantly. You had the big Rudy Gobert trade and the Brogdon trade and whatnot, and then basically since then it's been radio silence. Once KD basically announced that he wanted to get traded, it's been pretty relatively silent, like in the entire NBA. And to be honest, like I think it's going to continue like that because there's just too many moving pieces, and you know, I don't think it's a surprise that a lot of the big names that even haven't been moved themselves haven't, in part because I think that they could either directly or indirectly have some effect on the entire NBA landscape. So, like DeAndre Ayton, for example, is someone who people have, talked about going to the Spurs, who have cap space, or the Pacers. But the Pacers could get involved in any type of multi-team Nets trade. You have Miles Turner, who everyone thought was going to get traded. He's someone who could probably get looped into any Aiden related thing. You obviously have the rumors of the Raptors and/or the Pelicans, and then you also have other names that people assumed were going to get traded, like
Mm-hmm.
John Collins and whatnot. But I think the entire league is kind of in a standstill because this Nets deal might involve so many players and so many teams that I think a lot of GMs don't really know how many roster spots they're going to have, and so it's just created a massive limbo within the entire league for a lot of different teams. So I mean, I'm interested to see what happens. And the other thing you got to think about is, and this obviously doesn't relate to the Nets directly, but like you also have teams where if they if they like a team like the Suns, let's say they don't get Durant. Let's say the Nets end up making a deal with Toronto, or the Nets don't make a deal at all. and the Suns end up losing Aiden to like the Pacers for like pennies on the dollar, or to the Spurs just flat out through cap space. Like that, now you have a Suns team that's without their best center. All their players now knew that they were about to be in a trade. They got an aging point guard. It just seems like there's a bunch of different like permutations, whatever you want to call it, that could happen. A bunch of sliding doors, I guess is probably the right way to say it, based off of whatever happens over the next week or month or however long it's supposed to, go on for. I have no idea.
You also have the landscape of where the fans are. The fans, like that was like the way you just broke that down is where the NBA is. But if you're talking about our Nets fans, like, it is weird to see that we have no unified thought, idea, or process. We're just a fractured group of people with different wants. Talk about that a little bit, Sam. Like, have we all lost our damn minds?
I mean, look, I think, and we'll obviously get into it in detail. I think it's really interesting because, right, as you said, like, I kind of gave the basketball overview from the Nets fan perspective. I think it's so interesting from, honestly, even beyond a basketball standpoint, from just like how you judge, obligation and duty.
It's cultural.
Responsibility. Yeah, there's some type of there's a cultural thing involved. Like, it's just interesting seeing, how people have taken this whole entire KD Kyrie thing, and there's also a big like management versus labor kind of undertone to a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I mean,
I think it's a little bit more complicated than management versus labor. That always was a very clear. Yeah.
I think the people that are separating are the people who are looking at this in the most like naive and kind of unsophisticated way possible. But like, yeah, I mean, look, you have a bunch of different sects right now. I would say you have the sect of people who are KD/Kyrie stans mixed with a little bit of Nets fandom, where they basically cannot believe that a team would ever do anything not 100% in line with what KD and Kyrie want. You have people who literally just want what's best for the Nets generally, and because of that, are kind of in the middle on all this. They want to see KD and Kyrie back, but they also realize that what was going on wasn't sustainable. You have other people who were just completely sick of everything that was going on and basically are ready to blow this entire thing up, didn't think that what was going on was sustainable at all, and don't really even care if KD or Kyrie is back. And obviously within those three kind of groups, there's also a ton of nuance.
No, I felt heartbreak the first day. I felt heartbreak, and for an old ass man with big ass kids, I felt like it's kind of like when I was a kid and I found out that Darth Vader wasn't black. I really had a picture of a black man inside that suit. Like, and matter of fact, the picture I had of him was that he looked just like O.J. Simpson. That it was O.J. Simpson underneath the Darth Vader helmet. And when I heard that Luke, I am your father line, I was like, damn it. You know what? I digress. It hurt me a lot because as a big KD fan, this is not the dude I thought he was. And I've spent a lot of characters on Twitter arguing back that this is not the person KD is. KD would never do that. KD is not a follower. You don't become that great if you don't understand your singular purpose. All these things that I've said about Kevin Durant, he made them untrue. He made what I believed about him untrue. But then the next day I started thinking about it. I was like, well, if you really look at this from the 10,000 foot view, you have a team that hasn't been out of the second round. And no matter what the context is, reasons, whatever, they haven't been successful. Basketball hasn't been the most important thing. And a franchise that used to be considered a model franchise was set in disarray. So I started. Those are irrefutable. Like that's what happened, right? Without an opinion, without anything on it. That's where we are. Could we wake up and have our best players be 25 and 21 and have a bouncy team that's competitive on most night because they could defend, may search for where they could get buckets from on a daily night, but could that be better for us? Could KD, like Harden, I believe, save us from ourselves? Because he's older, his body is wearing down. Why not let that go somewhere else, more ready to win, more in a franchise more in their right mind than what we are right now? And the weird thing is, and which is, how we're going to get into our next topic, which is who's at fault. The weird thing is, for the first time, I feel like Sean Marks and Josiah are doing their job. I think before their answer to everything was, well, whatever they want, do it. Okay, is that what they want? Let's do it. Almost every single time. That's basically been the mindset of the Nets the past 3 years. And for me, I don't understand how they could get blamed, one, for what's going on, because they just have been, their track record is just doing what the Stars want, and then two, be mad at them the moment a star calls them and says, I want to be out of here, and the owner is like, and because KD specifically called the owner, and then the owner's response is, okay, let's do it. I think you have to be at a level of frustration, a level of I'm done with this, to get to that point when Rich Kleiman calls you. And I think that, which Kool-Aid, I want you to kind of reflect on as we try to break down who's at fault here.
Yeah, I was about to interject on something you just said.
Oh, then go ahead.
So this is the first time since Father Russia left the team that I think the GM actually has a plan this time. I don't think when Sean Marks inherited Billy King's fuck up, he had to do too much. All he had to do was be competent to not do what Billy King did. We was at rock bottom.
Right.
You can't go no lower than where we were at as a franchise. So you can take a chance on a Joe Harris and a Spencer and then nurture it so it works out.
Yeah.
You can do the D'Angelo Russell trade because you have no young stars, nothing to build on. You can give LeVert, you can trade for LeVert, and even though he's, coming off injury, you can allow him to blossom. The one thing that people fail to forget was in that draft, the Jared Allen draft, Bam was supposed to come to the Nets. Everybody thought Jared Allen was going to go higher than Bam.
Right.
And, for whatever, it worked out for both parties, right?
It worked out better for Miami.
Yeah, but I'm not that big on Bam. But it worked out for every way they felt. Mm-hmm. It worked out for both of those players. They're getting $100+ million. It worked.
True.
Okay. And then they go from 20 to 28 to 42 wins. They're the darlings. And everybody's on cheap deals. Then that's where
side buys the team.
No, I don't know. He didn't buy it yet. He bought some of it.
Yeah, he bought half.
And this is how I'm gonna transition into who's at fault. So when you get to that point, it's another blank canvas. You get the stars. Now, here's the issue with getting the stars. I think that and I saw it on Twitter and I agreed with it, that because technically Sean Marks only had 3 years on the job, and the first year is a throwaway year. because what he came in like February or something. He
Yeah,
came late, so he
he
came in
came
the
in
middle of
right
the year.
after the All-Star break or something like that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
so
he came
I'm not gonna count.
mid-season.
Yeah, I'm not gonna count that. I count the next season. So he probably had a year and a half, 2 years altogether before the stars got there. Okay, you can't really build a culture yet in 2 years. The reason why is because Kenny Atkinson was a first-time head coach. So he's still learning the ropes as to be the head person and responsible for everybody. So he need a little learning curve. And he had nobody behind him who really did it and had structure and success. Yeah, we can say they're doing it the Spurs way or whatever. But if you don't have what Eric Spoelstra had in Miami, like you had Pat Riley to lean on. He was there with Stan Van Gundy. People may not like Stan, but he was winning.
Let me say something about that. It, luck plays such a big part in all of this, and the reason why is Pat Riley got lucky to have a Magic Johnson, a championship team, a team that already won a championship with another coach, but they liked Pat Riley. And he liked Pat Riley enough to force a move as a second year NBA player too. Wow. Magic Johnson was able to get Pat Riley in that role. They won tons of rings, and and uh and he got tons of credibility from that. Same thing with Popovich. Popovich, it was a piece of luck of getting Tim Duncan in the draft. If the Nets get number one overall, history is way different. But those rings, once you are successful, you could then talk about what your culture is, because
And
no matter what culture you have, people have to believe you can do it. And if you have no
that's it.
rings, people are always going to be speculative on if you can do it or not.
That's it. You're 100% right. To a certain degree, it takes luck. Everybody knows every season there's luck, health. However it go. Now, in everything you said, you're 100% facts, but also the part you left out, they had a GM that had done it. So it may have been new, but they showed some signs of I know what I'm doing. Not to say that Sean didn't, because he built it back up. Fine. Now you conceded to me. They conceded too much to the stars. I think we might have. Let me go back for a second. We might have should have waited another year. Even, and I know that sounds crazy to say, yo, you wouldn't take Kevin Durant and KD. Yeah,
And
everybody
Kyrie,
would do that in theory. Yeah, and Kyrie. Everybody would do that in a heartbeat, but the Nets
right,
wasn't ready. As a front office, nor as a coaching staff, were they
mm.
truly ready for those high character superstars. And
I,
when I
I
say high character, I'm talking
I
about
think
talent.
I think you mean high caliber, right?
Yeah,
Like,
high caliber. Yeah, yeah. That's
you,
what I said. That's why I corrected myself. I'm talking about the talent.
right?
Um,
It's and what those type of players can demand, right?
yeah. So we wasn't fully suited to deal with that. Now, fast forward when we start talking about the blame. The blame starts. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna knock them, but Sean Marks didn't actually recruit them, and I've been saying this for years now.
I've
He
said it for
inherited
years.
them.
Yeah,
He inherited them and got lucky. Hey, but here's the question: they didn't choose the Knicks. They could have went there. They had the
right,
same open policy for both. They chose the Nets because they could mold it the way they wanted and
right,
bend it to their will.
right.
They knew they couldn't do that,
but it is
and with the
really
Knicks,
to push back. It is like this is where I think that Marks actually doesn't get enough credit in that. So I totally hear you about the like Katie and Kyrie chose the Nets. It wasn't like Marks did some like
he made it comfortable. He made it. I know what you're about to say.
but
He made it an intriguing option to come there.
yeah, like he like the reason why like for all of the nonsense about like oh well Kyrie grew up a Nets fan and all that stuff, which as we know and as as it's been apparent, absolutely nothing, is, you know, like KD and Kyrie, if the Knicks had Joe Harris and Dinwiddie and Jarrett Allen and Claxton and Karis LeVert, KD and Kyrie are choosing the Knicks. They didn't choose the Knicks because it wasn't because of like James Dolan or any of that, or because the Nets had Kenny Atkinson or anything like that. It was because Marks created a team where he had 4 to 5 ready-made guys who could play in playoff games, and all he had to do, and he also created 2 max slots. So, like, that's why I push back when people say that KD and Kyrie didn't choose because of Marks, because you could say the same thing about like with like even with Pat Riley, like LeBron, Wade, and Bosh went to the basically the one team that had 3 max slots. The Knicks didn't have 3 max slots. I think the Bulls were the only team that could partially have gotten to 3 max slots, even
But
at the time.
they went to Miami even better because it was easier because Dwayne Wade was already there.
Right,
Going
exactly.
to going to Chicago, I mean, all 3 of them had to change.
Yeah,
Now,
right,
the
for sure.
push,
Which even proves more that Riley didn't do as much. It was basically that it was easy.
yeah, and I'm not knocking Marks for this, but what I'm saying is, and that's I didn't get to finish the thought is that most times when you're building it and you're going out and you're having conversations with these free agents, you kind of know how you want to build it and you're selling them on your vision, right? And then they either going to sign because they see the vision with you, they plant the vision with you, or they don't sign. So for Marks to find out the same way we found out that they chose the Nets and that they just coming, so then you don't have a full plan yet on how you're going to build around them and how it's going to look. And point in case is you fire the head coach while neither star is playing that year. It doesn't matter. No reputable organization who actually has a plan and structure, strong or culture, as the word we like to use, will do that. That's
But
something that
Kool-Aid,
happens.
what if the players, even though they weren't playing, what if the players is that's what they wanted? They didn't
Okay,
approve
I'm gonna get to
of
that.
the head coach.
They're not playing. That is not something you have to do in February, March of a season where you're getting ready for the playoffs. You do not do that.
I
Not with
never I
coaches.
but you're missing this the
So you
point
wait.
that
So, no. I get the point you're saying. It doesn't matter for that year because the star players are not playing. That is something you do behind the scenes where you talk to the stars and you tell them, listen, we're getting ready for the playoffs. We need our playoff push. Y'all are not here right now.
right, but
We
they
can
wanted
work on that and
DeAndre
get you a
starting.
coach. It
I did
doesn't matter.
I never believed
It,
that until now. I never believed that I never believed that the stars even had anything to do with it. I thought it was an antsy new owner. The owners, new owners, they like to put their mark on the team and they want to do
and
something
then
when
and
right.
that's fine.
I'll,
And
I'm
that's when the GM steps in. That's when the
right,
GM steps in and tells them, no. We'll do
right.
that on the off season because
But
then you can get who you really want.
Cooley, I don't believe that he even wanted to fire him at all. I think he refused. They told him, remember how this went down. Sean Marks had a meeting with him, right? And in that meeting, he basically told Atkinson what the players wanted. I need you to play DeAndre Jordan, right? Which at the time I thought was crazy, and I was totally wrong because it now, in hindsight, looks like for sure, and I want you both to react to this, that KD or Kyrie asked for Atkinson to be fired because he refused to play DeAndre Jordan over Jarrett Allen.
No, the wording was he didn't know how to deal with stars. DeAndre Jordan wasn't a star.
But
So,
that was that I feel like that because immediately he gets fired, Jacques Vaughn gets put in, DeAndre Jordan is in the
and
lineup.
this stuff. Yeah, we know what it was. But my thing is, and this is to go to the blame. If you're a GM at some point with the new owner, he's trusting you to know basketball, right? The basketball side. He's going to deal with the business side. That's your partnership. You have to stop him from himself the same way you have to stop the players from themselves. So when I look at the fault and who's to blame, it's because you conceded so much to the players. Like they had no backbone. At
That's
some
one hundred
point,
percent true. I
But don't
but
you
I
so
think
guys?
go ahead, Sam.
what you can say?
So here's where I kind of like lay on a lot of this stuff, which is that you know, if, in the outset when they first when this whole thing first started, Kyrie and KD were sold, and it was true that they were going to be like co-partners, and so like you two, you guys are more in like the business world like than I am. But like if that said, and then Kyrie and Katie actually have the authority, it seemed like, to make certain decisions and have their voice be heard, and in a lot of ways they almost seemed like they were acting unilaterally. Then you have to deal with the blame and the responsibility that comes with it. And so with all that said, it's like and this relates, which I know is probably where we're going to eventually go to, but this all relates to the Kyrie contract situation, which is like if KD says, I'm going to be I'm out if you don't give this guy a max who hasn't shown that he is in the slightest bit reliable, and even if he is reliable, is keeps you on edge the entire time, and also could demand a trade where he has a 5-year deal and then has even like negative value, it'd be one of the worst contracts in sports. Then like I don't think it's then fair to basically hold the team hostage and say, okay, well then I'm leaving. And so like the example I would give is like if the three of us are playing 3-on-3 and Kool-Aid is obviously the best guy playing, but Kool-Aid says, I'll only play with you guys if I get 70 shots a game. We'd be like, all right, like that seems like a little bit like excessive. I don't know, but so it's like if you're giving people an ultimatum that like that for the whole for the like grand scheme of everything doesn't really help anybody. I don't really see how that then is on the fault of like, let's say me and Eve for being like, well, actually, I think if we move the ball around, it actually would probably help everybody. And like, we're happy if you take like 90% of the shots, but we feel like 70 shots a game is probably a bit too many. And so
No,
that's where I kind of feel like this whole thing has gone completely off the rails, where everyone is now in this camp where like Sean Marks and Joe Tsai, from what we know about everything going on, wasn't like all they are asking for and all they wanted, which is something you guys have said to me in text forever, is Kyrie, we think you're unbelievably talented, but these last 3 years have been an absolute nightmare. Show up, and then we'll be happy to pay you. They weren't saying to Kyrie, we'll only pay you if you're 50, 40, 90 and first team All NBA. There was nothing like, there was no bad faith negotiating.
And I said this to y'all in the chat as well. So
Long before they did it.
Yeah, I don't want people to think that I'm just blaming the front office, because I'm not. What I'm saying is, if we're going to say they had fault, the fault was you gave over too much control, and y'all know me. I don't think they really put a balanced roster together. So that's their
You
fault. Now
you
going back to the players and
you
what
right.
you
The
were
both of
saying,
you are right. The
now I'm going on the Sam side, because I remember I said I was going to do both sides. The issue with the players is that nobody wants to talk about. Before they got to the Nets, who catered to them? That's the real conversation.
right.
Golden State
Nobody.
didn't cater to Durant this way. They had a structure. He may have been heard, but they went about their business. Kyrie, he wasn't heard in Cleveland. They won a chip. He wasn't heard in Boston. When he left, they went to the chip. He came here and got power and went crazy. Now, to me, KD, this is where it comes to KD. I don't care if you're my friend, right? This is business for us. I signed my contract in the summer. You should have done what you were supposed to do to sign your contract. Now, this is probably before the vaccine.
Right.
He could have had that contract was on the table, because
Right.
nobody saw this coming because he got hurt in the Buck series. Everything was fine, you
Yep.
know. So yeah, we want you to sign. You didn't do it, and nor did Harden do it, and now it's come to bite them in the butt because you didn't do it and you didn't get back. So as an owner, that I'm giving you everything. I ask one thing of you, regardless, and I'm not just talking about the vaccine because you know that's somebody's body. You're gonna do what you want with your body. But if I'm asking you to show up, if I'm asking you to do this, the contracts are given in good faith. So when we talk about the contract, he was offered a 4-year max money. So we talking about that $250 million deal he was offered. He just didn't like the way it was offered. Yo, if you come into play and earn your money, the first 2 years being guaranteed, and you got to play a certain amount of games for the back end, that's okay. And KD should have told him, yo, bro, you ain't play no games. You know the stunts you pulled. But KD can't act like he not mad with what Kyrie did because you saw it on his face
But
during the
that's an
season.
important point, Kool Aid. That's a really important point. It it goes back to KD not telling Kyrie, "Hey, yo, man, this is kind of important. Here's the science. You could test these things. You could check for what these ingredients do. I took it. You know, let's just make this happen."
But let's say that. But you know what's crazy? I got a brother. I told that to. He gonna do
Mm.
what he want. That's fine. But if you can't have that conversation with your friend, y'all not friends. Supposed to be having
Exactly.
every ugly conversation. So my thing is, then you should be able to tell Kai, yo, you left me here. I came here for you to do this together. You haven't shown up, and he should have been a man and said, you know what? Let me sign the contract because you get the money you want, right? And if you're coming to work, you're gonna get paid. I They can't even say if he get injured, it won't trickle because
because
injuries
injuries
happen.
happen.
I'm
I'm
pretty
pretty
sure the
sure the
language of
language of
that they
that they
could have
could have
fixed if
fixed if
that
that
was
was
in
in
there.
there.
But
But
it's
it's
to
to
me
me
the
the
onus
onus
is
is
on the
on the
players
players
when
when
you
you
give
give
you
you
everything
everything
you
you
ask
asked
for.
for.
And
And
granted,
granted,
it
it
all
all
hasn't
hasn't
been
been
right,
right.
but there's a lot that's going on. I wrote a tweet last year before Harden asked for the trade. I said, "Who you picking, Harden? You're gonna have to choose between Harden and Kyrie." Clearly, he for as much as Harden quit, it starts to make sense now when you look back hindsight. He
He
just
just
wanted
wanted
out,
out.
and at any means.
Not
But
But
that
that
don't
don't
absolve him.
it doesn't, and I want to make this clear. Like, it's weird that it sounds in the framework of how we're having this discussion like we're arguing, but all three of us, none of us said anything that's wrong. It's just they're just pieces of the puzzle, and we just may vary on how much of a percentage of the fact that this happened is the reason why all of this is happening.
And
Um,
Nash
Nash
plays a
plays a
part in
part in
that
that
too.
too.
Don't
You know,
make
you
sure
know,
you.
100 100%.
cool.
Sam, I was gonna have you go on it and kind of put a cap on who's to blame.
It's an 100% pie. It's
it's
and I have to put Nash with front office. I mean, I could put him with coaching, but I think had he would have been in, first of all, he's the wrong hire, so that goes back to front office because that was a Sean Marks hire. He asked Nash to coach before Kenny Atkinson. Nash said no. Nash then saw KD and Kyrie, got googly eyed, thought he was going to be Steve Nash, and he's terrible. So even in this rebuild going forward, he should not be the person touching our next iteration of this next this next chapter. He should be going with the O because he's out of his depth. Nash philosophies, I think, um, don't didn't coincide with the stars. Um, and to me, it was shown in the Boston sweep. He still can't make adjustments, and he didn't help his players. He didn't put them in the best position to succeed. Um, and it's not no fault of his own. You don't know what you don't know. He's a Hall of Fame point guard. He doesn't have a feel for the game from the other side, which is the coaching. So when you really look at the blame, it's going to be about 50-50 because front office and coaching go together. And it's a marriage that just didn't work because, first of all, Kyrie and KD do not work without a connector. And for those who don't know, the connector is the point guard. Them two alone do not work and go together by themselves. So
I
I
think
would
a
hope
miss.
in this reason,
I think a misscouting of Kyrie is that he's a point guard.
he's just a two guard.
He's a two guard, and I think that's one of the mistakes of the front office is not realizing how bad that they needed a point guard. Sam, put a bonnet on this who's to blame thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like Kool-Aid started touching on one thing that I think, and I've been really adamant about this, that I think is the really under the radar thing that no one seems to say that much about KD, which is that the dude, in a lot of ways, and it's unfortunate because, Eve, as you said, like a lot of the stuff that we didn't think about him has kind of come true, in that he has like this passive aggressive way of showing that he's upset, and this trade request was kind of case in point. But he also seems like he's allergic to direct confrontation because a lot of this stuff that's going on right now could have been settled by pure, like, just like hashing it all out, which is why I thought like the conversation you guys had about, friends and what you're willing to say, to me is like super spot on. Like, to me, the KD Kyrie thing is almost like the two guys in a group of friends where everyone in the group understands that one of the friends does something that's annoying and really grating on everybody, and like people really can't stand it and they're debating like kind of excluding him, but the best friend isn't willing to just like say to the dude like, hey man, like when you do X, Y, or Z, it's really fucking annoying and no one wants to hang out with it. Like when you talk about how much money you make at work, or when you talk about like what you do outside of whatever it is, whatever annoying tendency you have, like you should probably stop, and it would actually be for the better of the entire group if you stop, because then everything will just kind of be more seamless. And so that's what it just kind of seems like to me. It seems like you have this dude who like is clearly in a lot of ways in Kyrie, who's just a weird mercurial guy that has, and this has been reported a lot, has a lot of yes men around him. And because of it, like, is not really used to anyone saying like, hey dude, like this stuff that you're doing is phenomenally debilitating to a franchise. And I think that like, it's so telling that KD, like when we put out what ended up happening at the end, what ended up happening legitimately was that KD is upset that Kyrie wasn't able to get a contract, that there was not one team in the NBA that was remotely even close to offering the same thing. Like that's that is what we're talking about at the end of the day. You can talk about like, oh, Adam Harrington was fired, and like there's been other rumors about like this guy was fired and they saw it as disrespectful, whatever. Like this has to if Kyrie got a max contract, KD would not have requested a trade. I think we can all agree with that. So it's clear that the contract is the big thing.
Do we all agree with that? I agree with that. Kool-Aid, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that, but it also let KD know he was losing some of his power.
Right.
And I think that is also a part of it that has to be said.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll finish, Sam. I think he was done.
But at the end of the day, it's like, do we like? Can we put out on the table like how crazy that is? Like you're talking about a dude who is unbelievably concerned about what his legacy is, no matter what he says, and who is sensitive about what's happened with him, with how his last two titles were looked at, and the dude legitimately is now willing to just like throw away this new thing that he started, which he is the face of. Like he is the face of this Nets thing. Like Kyrie is obviously kind of like the villain in it all, but KD is the face of this Nets project. Like it's not like Curry with the Warriors or whatever. And he's throwing it away because there's a guy who literally, like, Eva's posted this on Twitter a million times, and I don't think it can be said enough. A guy who literally is being talked about being traded for Russell Westbrook, who's one of the worst contracts in basketball, and like two picks that are 4 to 6 years away. That's what we're talking about, what his value is for someone that people think at the same time deserves a max contract.
And can I just say one thing real quick about that, Sam? because it's important. The nerve of this dude, Chris Haynes, to put that deal out there and say, and they want to offload, Joe Harris and Seth Curry.
Yeah.
So a trade where the Nets get nothing, zero. They get a negative, a player that makes you worse when you get him.
They lose three starters, basically.
They lose 3 starters to you, and all you send away is your problem. How fucking gullible was these Lakers fans making spaces, talking about it like the trade had already been done, just like fucking Chris B. Haynes is Adam Silver. What is wrong with people? I'm sorry.
I got a better one for audacity, and goes to summarize everything we've been talking about. We won 44 games this season, right? With with Kyrie playing 29 of them. So if Kyrie plays another 10 games, are we the 1 seed? If he plays 15 games, if we play 15 games, right? We win 7 of them. If he played 15 more, we win about half the games with him. We'll be a 51-win team. That was about first place.
Right.
That was right there, first to second.
Yo, Kool-Aid, what about one step further though? If Kyrie plays 15 more games, whether it's because he's vaccinated but then got hurt or whatever it is, I think you're also getting a more motivated James Harden the whole time.
Well, and this is the issue that fans have. Because they took that stance and then wavered, then it leaves the door open to say, well, you should have just let him play from the beginning.
The results say that move threw the team in disarray. But
it wouldn't threw them in a disarray if you did it from the beginning and everybody knew it. It's the fact that you did it in January and the team had a rhythm and they were first, second place and they were cooking. And then now you put them in, and we know why, because COVID ran through the league and our team get it. But that kind of dynamic personality will throw anything off. But it had to be done either way.
Yes, sir. What did you say? Yeah, no, I don't know. I guess I'm just at a point, and this is like a more philosophical comment than anything else. I'm just very sick of, blaming the people who I think in general have been trying to do right by what's going on. And I think for Nets fans to look at what's going on and be like, wow, like Josiah and Sean Marks have failed me. It's like, look at what they've given you since they've taken on their roles versus what Kyrie has given you. Like, I just find the disconnect to be kind of weird. Like, I get that Kyrie is a player. I get that he's one of the most talented or skilled players to ever play basketball, whatever. But like, everything that's happened in his 3 years here has just been a domino effect that leads to more and more and more issues. And like, you can always take each action that Kyrie does and rationalize it or say that it wasn't that big of a deal or whatever. But at the end of the day, no other team has all these issues happening. And like, you guys are in business. I'm hoping to join the legal world. Like, stuff like past events and precedent, that stuff ends up showing a lot. And what we do know from the past is that Kyrie has a tendency to go to certain places and the places end up in utter disarray. And when he leaves, they become way better, which is why I was of the opinion that, look, if they can trade him and get, like the combination that we heard about with the Clippers, for example, like Norman Powell and someone else and a pick or whatever, like, to me, it's like you're not getting the same talent back. But in a lot of ways with someone like that, it's like addition by subtraction. It's like, I just think a lot of this stuff is relatable to life. It's like you play 3-on-3, with friends of yours, and you might have like two of the most talented guys on your team. But if like the two guys hate playing with each other and like, and you have terrible chemistry, and no one feels like moving without the ball or whatever, you're not going to win games. Like, this isn't 2K, and it's like clear. It
go
just,
ahead, Sam.
no, yeah, it just clear to me. Like, you look at that Celtics team the year after Kyrie left, and you substitute Kyrie for a guy in Kemba who was a shell of his former self, whose knees were already gone, and who even at full strength isn't even close to where Kyrie is. But like, the team was eons happier. Like, it just wasn't.
Why?
Yeah.
You know why? And it's something I tweeted yesterday. All of this play that we're talking about, it's all about respect. This was players going too far. Management had enough, and you can't tell somebody who's paying your paycheck what they're going to do. To a certain degree, it's over. You just had no respect for the person that cuts your checks, and that's why we're here where we at. Because we're not. Our stars don't live in reality, nor did Kyrie have respect for the institution, as he probably would say.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a button on it by saying the some of the blame goes to someone none of us have mentioned so far, and that's the fans. I think.
Nah, fans are getting hit with streets. Nah, you can't.
Well, fans
are fans.
Well, let me tell you why I think that. And then, when a team is winning, losing, whatever it may be, there's a climate around the team. And if you've been a part of Nets Twitter long enough, you could recognize when, that a certain climate or a certain feeling will motivate a certain move. They are the customers. And that's why they sneak in our spaces. That's why they create burner accounts to hear what we're talking about. We are the customers. And if, anything, the customer's always right, even though we are painfully wrong. And for a long time, the status quo thought and what we were demanding as a group, that includes all of us, because we were so enthralled with having superstars that we stopped demanding the core thing that made us who we were. And so the atmosphere around these people who are product testing was give Kyrie all the power, give KD all the power, whatever they want, do. That was the consensus feeling of the majority of us as one digital stream of consciousness. And I hear it's worse on Nets Facebook. I don't know what Nets Facebook is. I've never been on it. But we need to start marketing on there, Sam. We got to get on that. But I hear it's the same but worse in other places. So what we're asking for has been a part of our demise because it hasn't worked. And I want to be able to hold the owners accountable. I want to be able to hold the GM accountable. I want to be able to hold the coach accountable. But you can't do it because the players have existed in this atmosphere where they can do no wrong. And we blame everybody but them for what's going on. And that makes them bulletproof. That makes them where they feel no shame of getting swept. You understand what I'm saying? Like KD had like a 10-point game in the playoffs or some crazy shit like that. Less than 15. I've been trying to scrub my brain of what happened. And these games were close. So, but when all of that happened, we blamed everybody but them. And it was them that chose some of these players. It was them that missed all these games. It's them, regardless if it's their fault or not. If you're not healthy, that's a part of what that's a you problem as a player. if you can't be available, or if you're old and rickety and you can't play 82 games, not expecting, but you can't play 75 games and push a team to a number one seed, how do you not wear some of that blame? And they don't. We keep telling them they're great. I'm a part of that. I kept on telling KD, you're great. It's that weirdo Kyrie. No, come to find out, it's all of them. And instead of being mad at them for what they do, we get mad at each other. We felt like people come on your timeline offering their meat. What kind of shit is that? That's what you do? It's crazy what's happening in the climate of Netsdom, because we are the customers. And what we're asking for is the same things that have made us suck. So I look kind of forward to this going forward. We get Brandon Ingram. We get this young kid, Scotty Barnes. We add that to what we have. We could have a We could have a lengthy, bouncy, athletic, fun team of hungry players that want to make their name in the NBA. And that concludes my rant. Excuse me. But it brings us to the next part of this conversation we're having, is where do we go from here? I want to play a game, gentlemen. I'm going to assign a team that we can do the trade for KD with. And you're going to tell me what the best trade you could get from it. The three teams I'm going to use are the Suns, the Pelicans, and Toronto. Once I assign the team to you, you make the best trade the Nets can make with that team to go forward. I'm going to take the Suns because I hate that trade. I can't stand it. So I'll swallow the bitter pill. Sam, I want you to do the Pelicans. No, excuse me. I specifically want Kool-Aid to do the Pelicans. And Sam, I want you to do Toronto. You got it?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm here. No, I'm here.
All right, cool. So good. Kool-Aid, give me your Nets with KD, sending KD to the Pelicans for what?
You know I like this one here. So I'm taking baby KD. I'm taking Brandon Ingram. He makes about $30 million. I think he got 3 or 4 years left. He's 24 years old. He gives you 25, 5, and 5 right now. And it's Zion's team. So he's doing that as a number 2, but he's really a 1 because he closes for the Pelicans. Then I'm asking them to give me either Herb Jones or Trey Murphy.
Ooh.
You know, knowing that they're going to say Herb Jones because of the playoff series in the season that he had.
I get hyped as you talk.
So they'll give you Trey Murphy. And for those who are not familiar with him, he went to Virginia, but he's like a 6'9", 2'3". He's a spot-up shooter. He can do some things. He's long, athletic. And then I'm asking for Daniel Dyson, the 6'7.5", 6'8" point guard. That's their rookie pick this year. So it would be kind of like how the Gobert trade, where they took the first round pick, Kessler Walker.
Yeah.
So
7-footer.
when you think about the eighth pick makes around $4.5 million. So if you throw that with what's his name, Bi, that'll get you around $35 million. I think Trey, this was his first year, so you have somebody else on a controllable rookie contract. with 4 years before you even talk about an extension. So that'll take it to about almost 40 million. The trade could be done because they would have to send back like 35 million. And then you asking for the 4 picks and the four swaps. And then you can sell KD because everybody's so concerned with, well, what if KD doesn't want to go there? You're telling KD you're going with Zion, you, CJ McCullough, you're still gonna have Herb Jones, you got Graham, they have other young pieces. And Larry Nance Jr., they have vets that been to the chip. And you can tell him, hey, that's actually a better situation than Phoenix. And then after I say this, then I'll do whoever goes next. Because when you think about Phoenix, for them to try to force us that trade, they're gutting 6 or 7 players to make the money work. So, in a nutshell, KD going to Phoenix would look like the Nets right now. If somebody gets hurt, it's over. So you go to the Pelicans, you don't have to do all the lifting. That's Zion's job. That's CJ McCullough's job. You're the topper. Pause, no homo for saying that. I digress.
Let me tell you, I have a little tear in my eye right now, wishing for that trade. Like that trade, I could move forward with that trade. That trade makes the Nets a good team for the next 5 years. Brandon Ingram is 24. He's at the height of his powers. He's just figuring out what he could do.
He's not even in his prime yet. He falls in line with what we have with Ben Simmons. So everybody I named is 6'8" or taller, long, athletic, and one happens to really be a guard.
That's a hell of a trade. I'm wishing, because if you could get Herb Jones on top of that, another Bulldog defender, that's one of the best defenses in the league. No,
Yeah, but I don't think they would give it. So you would have to word it as, you give us either one. They're going to give you Murray just because they're not getting rid of Herb, and they feel like they won. They got to keep the player they wanted. Everybody knows you're not going to get Zion, even though he signed that max. You wasn't going to get Zion. Constellation, I give you Brandon Ingram. Okay, that's the young star.
I take it. I take it any day. I love it. Sam, beat that trade. Beat that trade with the Toronto Raptors.
So the trade that Kool-Aid just gave was good. I like it. I think that this trade that I'm about to give, I think makes them pretty good now, and also gives them a ton of flexibility and just good balance moving forward, which is, I think you do KD, and the Nets might have to throw in somebody else depending on what the Nets take back. And I think you give up. I think the Nets get Gary Trent Jr., who's, by the way, only 23 and a half. They get OG Anunoby, who's just about to turn 25. And that was actually who I wanted the Nets to take the year that they took LeVert. And then you get Scotty Barnes. And I think if you trade those three, I think if you get those three, you might have to give back to them like a Seth Curry or a Joe Harris. I'm not sure, for money purposes. But
Why? The money is KD's contract is huge. You have to throw all those guys together to match for KD.
You're right. I was thinking about Kyrie's contract, which is smaller. You're right. And so I think if you do that, I think what you tell the Raptors is, look, we're taking Barnes and Anunoby, who are obviously two of your younger assets, and because of that, we're not as into getting picks back, or you don't have to give up as many picks, so you guys can keep some of the pick flexibility that you guys want in case you want to use those to get better. But you just re-signed a lot of guys. Like, they just re-signed Boucher. They re-signed Thaddeus Young. They got Otto Porter from the Raptors. So they actually have some depth. And so that, I mean, look, I think that's going to be a tough one. The issue is getting the money to work, because if Trent, let's say, is not part of it, Trent makes $17 million. So you got to get that from something else. I don't know if that's getting like Kem Birch or like getting Boucher, who I don't even know if he can get traded yet. Probably not. And so that's my thing. But I think there is an argument to be made, and people could disagree or think I'm insane or whatever. There's a real argument to me that people talk about where they would not do Scotty for KD straight up just because KD is 34 and Scotty hasn't even turned 21 yet. Scotty is in the second year of a rookie deal, and then you'll get the 5-year max extension. So you're talking like 7 to 8 more years of Scotty Barnes. Whereas, I mean, KD, we don't know. I mean, KD looked worse in the Boston series, which could have been for a lot of different reasons. But I think if you can end up with Scotty and then some combination of Trent, OG, or you get somebody else from another team, whatever it is, I just think that's a massive win. And I think like then you have a cornerstone guy who is, one of the best assets in the league, and someone who I'm sure the Raptors really don't want to trade. But if you're Masai, you're like, I already did this with Kawhi, and now I have a big three of KD, Siakam, and Van Vliet on top of whatever we keep. And so from that perspective, like then they're right up there with the Sixers and the Celtics and the Bucks for the best teams in the East. And so that's my deal. I mean, that's been the team that I've been focused on even before the rumors even started. That's who Barnes is the guy that I really want. I think there's an issue with Barnes and Simmons playing together. I think that's also an issue you think about later because they're both just such incredible athletes and they're both so young. And I also believe that Barnes' shot can continue to get better. I think he shot like 31% from three this year. So, but he's not someone who's afraid of trying, and it works. I mean, everything you say hear about Barnes is unbelievable. And so that's the deal that gets me the most excited by far.
He's my guy too. I look, the way I judge these trades is after I make the trade, am I comparable or in the conversation to either be immediately or grow into having a pairing that can go against the other pairings in the league. The Bucks are basically, and we saw that in the playoffs last year. Giannis and Middleton. Can a pairing of, I don't know, Donovan Mitchell and Miles, and Bridges, would that pairing beat Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown? No. But I do, but when I kind of imagine Ben Simmons and Brandon Ingram versus Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, that's an interesting matchup. The difference between that one and, let's say, Ben Simmons and your choice. I mean, the one you did, Sam, Scotty Barnes. Ben Simmons and Scotty Barnes versus Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. That's fireworks level, like for just 10 years from now, just them, going at each other in the playoffs, and it's really what you put around them that's gonna determine championships because they're young, they're gonna be able to go through long seasons, and I think we could end up better. But go ahead.
So with the Scotty Barnes, Ben Simmons, and this was something I said in our chat. The only issue with that is you might not have Ben Simmons, and the reason why is neither one of them are the scorer. Like, to me, Scotty Barnes is going to be a great number 2. He's not the scorer yet, so you would need to probably pair him with a Donovan Mitchell, and then that's why you'll see a OG and Sam. That's why you need those draft picks.
But I think, but here's my pushback to that. Kool-Aid. If I don't believe Donovan Mitchell and Donovan Mitchell plus Brandon Ingram beats Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think Donovan Mitchell is a step below those dudes.
No, it's only for if you do the Toronto trade. And the reason why is Scotty is about 6'8", right? He's young. OG is about 6'8", 6'9". Trent is 6'6" shooting guard. So when you put that with Ben, right, you're kind of getting redundant. And we know it's a wings league, and Ben is a point guard, but you don't have a scorer. So you need those picks.
He's a point guard in a wing's body, and he defends the best wing. He defends the best player on the court, 1 through 5.
So what I'm saying to you is, when you look to say who's taking the last shot, you won't be complete as a team yet. You have to go get that piece still after the Toronto trade.
Correct. Correct. Which is why the Kyrie trade is important to me. I feel like if you could get a Sexton, if you could somehow tell someone who wants Kyrie, you take your assets and go get me someone like Sexton, 24, a kid who has scored 24 points a game in this league. You put that with this team, that's a solid start. Or at least someone you could put with draft picks in the future to go get your superstar that's going to be your league dog your league dog point guard or your lead dog scorer. But nonetheless, let's end this out by voting for whose trade was the best.
You didn't do
Oh, let me do the Suns right quick. There is no good Suns trade. There's no way I could ever get my mind to wrap around the idea that any Suns trade would be as good as either the Raptors or the Pelicans. The Raptors or the Pelicans are the only people who you could do this trade with. Anything else is just cowering to Kevin Durant, and that would be a triple sin out the door. You've lost. Go ahead, Sam.
No, I was just gonna say the only way the Suns trade to me becomes good is if you agree, let's say, to get the Aiden Bridges, whatever, and then all those unprotected Suns picks, which I actually think could be really valuable because KD and Paul will break down. They'll have no youth on the team besides Booker, who's always been a guy people thought might ask out eventually anyway. But if you can move some of those unprotected Suns picks with like a contract on the Nets, if it's like a Joe Harris or someone, and then get somebody like elite, like another asset or something, then I think it's good. I just think a lot of Nets fans don't really want, 7 picks. Like, I'd rather have 3 picks and more good players coming in, especially because I think Aiden and Bridges don't really wow any of us.
The other thing I like about the Toronto assets a little more, even though I'm gonna go ahead and say that there's 2 choices here. Win for a long time is the Raptors trade. You do the Raptors trade and they're going to win for a long time. Do the Pelicans trade, you're going to win immediately. You're going to be in the conversation to hold on, let me finish out. And so I look at if you do Brandon Ingram, you're going to be one of the toughest teams in the East this year. If you get Scotty Barnes, you're going to be a tough team for a decade. That's how good that kid is. You'll always have a talent in the conversation, unless he eventually forces his way out on some bullshit. And I think the next CBA is going to take care of that. But
no.
Go ahead, finish up.
No. All I was going to say is I think either Toronto or the Pelicans trade, because we're talking about Ben Simmons 25, Brandon Ingram 24. That's 10 years right there that they could be together. they're 24 years old. Kevin Durant right now is about to be 34.
Correct.
So they could do the same thing. Scotty Barnes, you can have for 15 years. I see what you're saying. He's going to give you 5 more years. But I think whatever trade you do, it should make you good now and greater later. And I want to say this to the Nets fans. We won 44 games last year. Whatever trade we get, and I'm only saying this about the Toronto or the Pelicans trade, we will have a better team, not individual talent, but a better team than we had while we had this debacle of the big 2 or the big 3. Because I truly think with the pieces they're going to put together, it's going to fit. And if it doesn't fit quite right yet this year, next year, it will definitely be a real balanced team. And I think these young boys can get you 44 wins. Like, let's not forget that we was a playing team. So the expectation shouldn't be championship. Because even having our stars, we only won 7 playoff games. Like, it's not like they was these world beaters that beat everybody. And regardless of injuries, vax, for whatever reason, that is the result. Stop looking at the what if and look at exactly what happened. It was a first round sweep. We got swept with the stars playing. Both stars played. We got swept. We always say superstars give you 1 or 2 games in the playoffs. We got none, and we had 2.
I think that's the most important thing that we could say to the Nets fans. This is an opportunity. On exiting this pod, on behalf of my podcasting partners, Kool-Aid and Sam, you know, what everything that happened in the past. We know we could blame that on these players, but everything from now on, we have a clean slate. If they actually pull this trade off, it's now on Sean Marks. It's now we can all unify and come together and say that it's our future is in the hand of Sean Marks, and what he does here will define his legacy. He could hold out and be and luck up into and put enough talent together to luck up into a championship, which a lot of GMs do, and become a New York legend, or he could be the conductor of the greatest basketball failure to ever happen in the NBA. He would be free. He's gonna free the ghost of Billy King if he doesn't get this trade right. Anyway,
he's on an expiring contract.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know why people keep asking for him to be fired. He's gonna be fired if he doesn't get this right. It's gonna be the clearest thing that somebody's getting fired. We are Pod Thorn.
Pod Thorn.